Welcome to the Histories of Northamptonshire podcast series, and this episode number 7. Recorded on location, each episode tells the story of one of the many and varied objects which are the focus of the exhibition A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects. The exhibition runs at the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery between the 20th of September 2025 and February 2026. Selected by local individuals, heritage groups and the museum's own curators, each object tells a different story from the county's past. The sound of people enjoying a day at the British Museum here in London, which is where we've come for this edition of the 100 Items of Northamptonshire, telling the stories of the county. Hello, who are you and why are we here at the British Museum for a particular object?
I'm Jill Cook. I'm head of the Department of Britain, Europe and Prehistory, and my specialist subject is the archaeology of human origins.
We've come to talk about an item associated with Northamptonshire, which is in the British Museum. For people who can't see the object, what is it? And give us a description if you would.
It's a reindeer antler object. It's a long shaft, so it's 70 centimetres long, which is about as long as my arm. I think most people's arms, in fact. It's from a male reindeer, a mature male reindeer, so it was originally much bigger than that, but the hat rack at the top has been cut off. The bottom end that was connected to the reindeer's head has been cut away, and the spike of antler, the beztine, which comes across the reindeer's face to protect it when it's fighting other males for mating, has also been cut away on an angle. So it's a very particular type of object. It's called a Lyngby axe. Lyngby is a place in Denmark, not far from Copenhagen. It's called an axe, but we don't really know that it functions as an axe. It appears to be polished, but unfortunately there is some modern damage consequent to it being excavated by the gravel diggers, and we can't be absolutely certain because the finders did a very good job. They felt that it was perhaps a bit soft and tacky and they didn't want it to deteriorate it. So they coated it with a well-known brand of varnish, which has done a very good job of conserving it, but has also changed its colour slightly from the natural antler colour and made it very difficult for us to look at the surface and determine any wear traces that it might have had. Now, sometimes these pieces are said to be for pole-axing animals, but you wouldn't get very close to a reindeer with one, although you've got the long extension of the shaft. Reindeer have poor eyesight but a great sense of smell. To be in front of a reindeer, you need to be very lucky to actually do any damage, and you don't have animal remains that show that kind of treatment of the reindeer. So other purposes have been proposed that it's used for chopping materials, but again, it doesn't show the kind of massive damage that would, flakes would come off and the edge would become crinkly from being bashed against something. So they may have been used in skin working on soft things. Some of them have a polished appearance. But, it's like picking up a screwdriver, not to use it to tighten a screw, but to open a tin. They may have been used for all sorts of things, and it's very difficult to tell now.
Prized nevertheless, though, by the person who either owned it or fashioned it, or both.
Both.
So we're talking about something which came from a reindeer, but we're also talking about something that was fashioned. It's a tool.
Maybe a tool, maybe a weapon. I mean, it's referred to as an axe because the effect of cutting that protective prong of antler means that the edge of it is parallel to what would be the handle. That's the definition of an axe. This object is about 10,000 years old. It belongs right at the end of the last ice age and the beginning of the warming period. Now, at that time, Britain was still the northwest peninsula of Europe. And you could walk across from Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands, into eastern England. It connects us with the material culture of the North European plain, just at that crucial moment when the ice is receding, sea levels are rising, but there's still a land bridge between England and the main continental mass.
We're talking about stories from Northamptonshire, so what do we know about where the item was found and perhaps the community it might have come from?
It was found in gravel diggings, and one day they came across this strange looking thing, and they took it round local museums, and everybody shook their heads and said, "We don't know what that is, it's probably nothing." But they were persistent, and eventually they found their way here, and I took one look at it and thought, it can't be, it is, it can't be, it is. Showed it to a colleague, did the same thing, and we realised that it is one of these axes which are common part of the equipment of people who lived by hunting and foraging at the very end of the last ice age, the beginning of the period when it's starting to warm up. And this is a time when people who were in Britain were probably there on a seasonal basis, probably following the reindeer across. And Europeans.
I want to take you back to something you just said a moment ago, Jill. This item was hawked around all kinds of museums because the finders didn't know what they'd found.
That's right.
You made the connection as to what this item could be, and hence the interest for the British Museum and why this item ordinarily resides here and perhaps not up in Northamptonshire. Do you remember that moment and how it felt?
Yeah, well, you know, I get a lot of public inquiries which fall into that category, and often they have been taken around local museums and finds offices, and people are not sure or doesn't look like anything they've ever seen before. This is unique to Britain, so they won't have seen it before unless they're a specialist in a particular field.
Unique to Britain, but not unique as an object. Unique in as much as, and I think you said it earlier on, it's the first one of its kind that's been found in
Britain.
Britain. So that's what confers its uniqueness.
Yes, I mean, they're very common across the North European plain. You get them in Lithuania and Poland, in Germany, in Denmark, in the Netherlands. So it's a commonly used implement.
So in a sense, there are two aspects of discovery relating to this object. First of all, it was discovered by being dug up. Secondly, it was discovered in terms of its relevance to Britain and what it then said about community. What does it say about Northamptonshire and perhaps that community?
Northamptonshire didn't exist 10,000 years ago, except as a geographical entity. It's part of this grand European territory, with people following animals and setting up probably fairly temporary campsites as they moved around. There is no such thing as nationality. There's probably group ethnicities and associations and bonding and socialising between communities, but there isn't a modern sense of nation or county.
Somewhere there is a reindeer missing an antler. Luckily, mankind found a use for it, and it was put into use in Northamptonshire, from whence it was found. Jill, fascinating that an item that could have come from mainland Europe as we now know it is here in Northamptonshire and tells its own story of the county having been discovered and now has come to the British Museum. Jill, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Histories of Northamptonshire podcast. If you would like to find out more about the objects or listen to other episodes in the series, go to www.northamptonmuseums.com. Alternatively, you can visit the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, where you can see the A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects exhibition for yourself. The Histories of Northamptonshire project is funded by Arts Council England as part of the National Portfolio Programme.